it's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, it's not your typical campaign.
Tonight, Ontario voters head to the polls on February 27th. A mother looking for answers as to why their family member was cremated before they could say goodbye.
It's such a well-known festival. It's so hard to get into. So I think it was just like a shock. Almost didn't believe it at first.
And the 2025 Sundance Film Festival starts in Utah. We'll talk to the creators of a film premiering at the festival. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Ontarians will be going to the polls on February 27th. After Premier Doug Ford confirmed Friday morning he plans to call a provincial election. But some observers say an early election is not necessary and worry Indigenous issues will get lost in the shuffle. APTN's Fraser Needham has that story.
NDP MPP Saul Mamakwa says the Conservatives' early election call shows a government out of touch with the communities it serves.
There's so much happening, so many needless deaths, unnecessary suffering, boil water advisories, and we have a crisis of our own in the north. And I think is a provincial election necessary? No.
Belton Coburn is a McGill University professor who follows both Indigenous issues and Canadian politics closely. He says Doug Ford's argument that he needs a mandate to fight threatened tariffs from U.S. President Donald Trump holds little water.
But he uses the rhetoric that I need a strong mandate. Well, this is international affairs being led at the national level between Canada and the United States. Of course, the premiers, as part of the Confederation, want to play a part in it. But he doesn't need a strong mandate. And in fact, in Canadian parliamentary affairs, and we do have the provincial parliament here, we don't have mandates.
In recent weeks, the Conservatives have been laser focused on how the proposed Trump tariffs could affect the Ontario economy. Coburn says none of this bodes well for the role Indigenous issues may play in an upcoming campaign.
I don't foresee Indigenous issues registering very highly. The Ford Conservatives have not been terribly friendly towards First Nations peoples, especially when upholding their treaty rights. So I think that'll be put aside and not even pop up on the radar during the campaign.
For his part, Mamakwa says although a winter election campaign may be unnecessary, he'll be ready to go once it is called.
It's winter time. Am I going to be on snowshoes? Am I going to be on skidoos? Am I going to be on, a beaver or a Cessna on skis? It's going to be an interesting one. But yeah, it's not your typical campaign.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Sounds like we should follow Saul on the campaign trail. To Nova Scotia now, where the Mi'kmaq chiefs turned down an offer from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. It was to take part in a project that would increase access all fisheries over the next 3 years. Angel Moore reports.
One thing people should know that, and that's why we want to make this message clear to the people. Our rights aren't for sale because.
That is what Chief Albert Marshall told Department of Fisheries and Oceans representatives at a meeting with the Mi'kmaq chiefs in Dartmouth last Wednesday. The chiefs of all the 13 Mi'kmaq communities rejected to be part of DFO's $259.4 million project to increase fishing access and reach long-term collaborative agreements with all 34 nations in Atlantic Canada. Marshall says DFO's offer forces treaty fishing into the same system as commercial fishing and is a direct threat to Mi'kmaq treaty rights.
I don't even bother unpacking their computers and stuff. I want to get them set up. I'm not sure if they were taking me serious at first place. And at the end of it, and I told them our trees aren't for sale. We all said no, and I actually thanked them at the end of it. Thank you for, and they're all kind of looked bewildered on their sisters. So thank you for reuniting with all the 13 chiefs, like all of us were there, like all the 13 bands. And I thank you for that. We stand united.
Meanwhile, a Mi'kmaq community-led plan is ready for the upcoming baby eels known as Elver's fishery, developed by 8 Mi'kmaq nations across the province. The Elver allocation model will designate waterways and ensure a safe and sustainable fishery. The Mi'kmaq chiefs call on DFO to recognize the community-led model. Marshall says he made it clear to DFO Mi'kmaq rights are not for sale.
And we want to be recognized as we're a sovereign nation. We can make our own laws. I don't know why they don't just listen to us. And
the Department of Fisheries and Oceans did not respond by airtime. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax.
A $50 million class action lawsuit has been filed in Alberta, alleging First Nations children sent to the Ecole Notre Dame school in the town of Bonnyville were victims of physical, mental, and sexual abuse. Suit was filed in 2019. A judge in Bonnyville certified the case earlier this week. The lawsuit says the abuse happened in the Catholic school after the day school in Kiwewin Cree Nation shut down in 1964. The governments of Canada and Alberta and the Lakeland Catholic Separate School Division and the Diocese of St. Paul have all been named as defendants. The class action will include students who attended the school in Bonnyville between September 1st, 1966 and June 28th, 1974. 3 people have been charged with first-degree murder after a man was found dead almost a year ago in a Métis settlement located northeast of Edmonton. In April of last year, Lac La Biche RCMP found burned remains in a fire pit in the area of the Kikino Métis settlement located about 180 kilometers northeast of Edmonton. RCMP Major Crimes say the remains belong to 34-year-old Jeremy Collins of Kikino. After a lengthy investigation, 3 people have been arrested. Last Friday, 33-year-old William Curtis White from Wabaska and 26-year-old Amber Hope from Kikino were both charged with first-degree murder and indignity to human remains. And last Wednesday, 31-year-old Randall Godwa from Kiwewin Cree Nation was charged with first-degree murder. White and Hope will appear in court in Lac La Biche on February 3rd. Godwa appears in court on February 6th, also in Lac La Biche. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to Action 81 is one step closer to being fulfilled. On Thursday, the National Capital Commission in Ottawa announced it has chosen a location for an Indian residential school national monument that will one day be located on Parliament Hill. The monument honoring Indigenous residential school survivors will be located on the western terrace of Parliament Hill, just west of Mackenzie Tower near the West Block overlooking the Ottawa River. Survivors had a say in the location, and a statue of Sir Robert Borden, Canada's 8th Prime Minister, will have to be relocated. The monument has a $20 million price tag, and the entire process will be guided by Indigenous values. Construction is set to take place in 2027, with an unveiling expected in 2028. A family in southern Saskatchewan recently held a memorial for a loved one who was cremated too early after his sudden death in 2023. The family says they never got to see him and do ceremonial protocols before he was cremated. Now they want to hold the funeral company accountable. With more, here's T.R. Wheatley.
There isn't a day that Kara Passip and her 2 daughters, Cara and Delana, don't think of Clyde Lone Thunder.
They devastated our family. They took a lot from our family.
On January 19th, they held a traditional memorial ceremony for Clyde on the White Bear First Nation, where leaders from the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations attended. Lone Thunder died suddenly in the fall of 2023. His family says they haven't been able to grieve properly because he was cremated by the Spears Funeral and Cremation Services in Regina before they had a chance to bring him home to White Bear for his funeral.
Not good for me. And it still doesn't even feel real that he, passed away because I never got to see him.
The custom in White Bear is to accompany the hearse home, have a wake, a last viewing, and a feast to prepare the spirit to depart the physical world before cremation.
So when I lost them and I wasn't able to do these protocols that I do as a sister, that I did for my other brothers, I wasn't able to have that with him.
Back in 2023, Spears General Manager Jeff Christensen admitted to the mistake. He told CTV News,
"The wrong body was transported to the crematorium,"
saying that happened when an employee didn't read a label on the casket. Spears changed their policy. Now 2 employees have to sign off before any body is cremated. Spears offered compensation, but Kara Passip says the situation still has not been resolved.
The compensation that they had offered, I'm not going to go into that. All I know is we want resolution.
The Passips say they might still take legal action. APTN asked Spears for their side of the story. They replied in a letter. It reads part, "As this matter has been referred by Ms. Passip to the Funeral and Cremation Services Council of Saskatchewan, we do not feel it is appropriate to provide comment at this time." The Cremation Council, which sets the standards of practice and procedures in Saskatchewan, told APTN they do not disclose, confirm, or comment on matters under review. Meanwhile, the Passives say they will continue to press the issue as they've been guided in the Sweat Lodge that this is the right thing to do to honor Lone Thunder's spirit. TR Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A recovery centre in Saskatchewan is being accused of misusing funds. That story and more still to come after the break. Welcome back. The Saskatchewan NDP and former employees of Willow View Recovery Centre in Lumsden are accusing the facility of misusing funds and denying proper treatment for people struggling with addictions. In addition to calling for a provincial audit, NDP Shadow Minister for Mental Health and Addictions, Betty Nippy-Albright, announced that the NDP has filed a Freedom of Information request to find out what's going on. The 60-bed Willow View Recovery Centre was set to open in early 2024, but by 2025 it still hasn't accepted inpatients. Former staff say the facility only offered virtual and day programs before finally admitting 5 inpatients just this week. Mandy Chalice, the former senior admissions coordinator of the centre, resigned last September.
It started off great, of course, because I was enthusiastic and excited for a change. They offered culture. They also offered a holistic approach to mental health and substance use. I quickly realized that culture was not important to them. I myself felt like I was a token Indian.
Chalice also said that if participants missed the day program, the facility still billed the Saskatchewan Health Authority. None of the allegations against the centre have been proven. And Anishinaabe songwriter from Ontario is sharing his experience on the open road through his latest single. Graham Jones of Manitoulin Island says his song Ride or Die explores his perspective on life through the eyes of a motorcyclist. APTN's Mike McDonald has more.
Read New Year's Eve paper out in your head.
For Graham Jones, his connection to music began after seeing a master songwriter live on stage.
After seeing Bob Dylan perform live in London, Ontario, many, many years ago, got inspired, picked up a guitar, started learning some chords, and started writing songs shortly thereafter. So that's sort of how I got into things in general. My mama swears we all go to heaven.
Jones, an avid motorcyclist, wanted to write a song centered on the biker's credo of ride or die.
We all know the term ride or die, and it's kind of like, well, she's my ride or die, and he's my ride or die, but it's always got this more innocent sense to it, but I wanted to sort of take it more serious and look at that phrase. And for us as motorcyclists, we are much closer to our mortality, I think, than the average person.
Ride or die. Jones says the song, which he wrote during a trip to Mexico a couple of years ago, is essentially about risk and reward.
You know, for me, the freedom and the experience of it is something that, you know, it's worth the risk. There's always a risk to things, risk to many things. But yeah, the sheer joy of riding is something that I would rather do than not do it and go to my grave and say that I didn't do something that I really wanted to and that made me feel alive. Skeleton girls with the pockets wet. Sea monsters, wooden horses.
Jones says music genres are more fluid than ever before and that it's hard to categorize his sound.
It's kind of like roots rock or indie rock, folk rock. It's definitely got a rock base to it. And then, you know, there's a little bit of country. There's a little bit of that old folk music, the blues in there too. So, you know, and it's pretty much all based around my acoustic guitar. So that's, again, why I like to use that folk moniker. But yeah, I would say folk rock is a pretty good definition.
Ride or Die is the first track of Jones's second album, which will be released later this year. Mike McDonald, APTN National News.
Well, the Sundance Film Festival has kicked off, and 2 Indigenous filmmakers from Manitoba are debuting their projects at the prestigious festival. We'll hear from them after the break. Welcome back. Time now to take a look at our photo of the day. And winter is usually less colorful as far as seasons go, but Gits shared this photo of the sky lit up in vibrant pinks and oranges as seen from Fort Liard, Northwest Territories. Thanks for that, Gits. How's your winter looking in your community? You can send us your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, -8 in Fredericton and Charlottetown. -14 with snow in Kuujjuaq, 13 below in Nain. -7 in Montreal, 8 below with flurries in Val-d'Or. -4 with snow in Sault Ste. Marie, flurries and 5 below in North Bay. -5 with snow in Thunder Bay, flurries and 8 below in Sioux Lookout. -13 with snow in God's Lake, 10 below in Norway House. -12 in Winnipeg, 9 below in Dauphin. -10 in Regina, -7 in North Battleford. -7 in Meadow Lake, snow, and -4 in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, -1 in High Level, 2 below in Fort McMurray. 0 in Edmonton, sunny, and -3 in Lethbridge. Sun's out and +3 in Vancouver, -3 in Kamloops. -6 in Prince George, 1 below in Smithers. -15 with snow in Old Crow, -4 in Whitehorse. 0 with snow in Yellowknife, -7 in Wrigley. -13 with flurries in Sax Harbor, snow and -3 in Paulatuck. 30 below in Chesterfield, -29 in Cambridge Bay. -31 in Resolute and Joe Haven. An animated documentary set in the Shamattawa First Nation and a stop-motion short about a gender-shifting superhero are among the Indigenous stories hitting the screens this week at the Sundance Film Festival in Utah. Reporter Sierra Bettens caught up with the filmmakers to hear more.
9 years ago, Peter Scriver began recording family stories from his home in the Shamattawa First Nation. His half-brother Seth animated them in Toronto.
It was originally just going to be Pete and I recording, kind of telling Pete telling stories, and then it slowly turned into a family portrait just because it was impossible to avoid.
There were like dogs running around, dogs barking at anything that moved.
It was like nerve-wracking at first because it was like animation takes so long, and it was like everything was taking so long. It's like, oh frick, man, the kids are all going to be adults by the time I'm done this. Like, it's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, I end up with 2 grandkids in the process.
This week, their film, Endless Cookie, will premiere at the Sundance Film Festival's World Cinema Documentary Competition. Set between Shamattawa in northern Manitoba and Toronto's Kensington Market, Endless Cookie tells a story of the Scriver half-brothers, one Indigenous and one non-Indigenous, and their charismatic family. From the bustling Toronto subway to the ice roads leading to Shamattawa, the story contrasts and connects 2 worlds.
Some similarities came up between Kensington and Shamattawa, which is they're both kind of little villages where, everyone kind of like, it's like a community that people, a lot of people know each other and are in each other's business.
When Métis filmmaker Amanda Strong heard her film was accepted into Sundance, she was in disbelief.
I was out walking my dog and I started to cry. It's such a well-known festival. It's so hard to get into. So I think it was just like a shock. Almost didn't believe it at first.
Strong's film, Inkwell for When the Starving Return, is an animated adaptation of a story by Tlichon Dene writer Richard Van Camp. Through stop-motion puppetry, it tells the story of Dove, a gender-shifting warrior who uses Indigenous medicine to protect their community against dark forces.
Really, this is a call to action for Dove's character in this future that's sort of been dominated by the forces of greed. And I think it's just meant to have us reflect on that and really think about the choices we can make today.
The Sundance Film Festival is organized by the Sundance Institute, a nonprofit started by actor Robert Redford. It runs from Thursday, January 23rd to Sunday, February 2nd in Park City, Utah. The 2 films will be available on demand through the festival's website. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Wow, those both look stunning. Congrats to both on getting into such a prestigious festival. Sad news now, as a board member of the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, where Chio passed away earlier this month on January 10th. Karen Green was from the Tyendinaga Mohawk Territory near Kingston, Ontario. She was credited with paving the way for a more comprehensive approach to healthcare for Indigenous patients at the CHEO. Before her time at CHEO, Green worked at the Department of Justice. She was also CEO of the Native Women's Association of Canada and one of the main writers of a chapter devoted to women's issues in the 1996 report of the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. Our condolences. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For news anytime, of course, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And before we go tonight, the Winnipeg Jets are set to host their 7th annual WASAC this Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. When the Jets host the Flames here in town, the game will be a celebration of Indigenous culture through music, dance, food, and more. The celebrations actually began today at Canada Life Centre, and we'll leave you with some of those visuals of today's events. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. From all of us here at APTN News, have a great weekend.